the top 5 best Deadlock players of the past year of 2025. My criteria of ranking these players: first of all, I really value player performance individually. Even if the player is in a bad team, if he's individually doing his job and trying to carry and sometimes succeeding, I will put that to his favor. Secondly, I think it's been accepted that EU region is superior to NA in gameplay, so I would put the EU pros over the NA pros simply because the region is better and more competitive. And the reasons for that is EU has more players. There are more intensive to be a pro in EU because there were bigger tournaments. And this is also the opinion of big figures like Dithi, for example. And also these lists are, of course, subjective by nature. For number 5, Zergi. He's a player from Buff Enjoyers and Virtuous Pro, which were the most successful team in EU region. And the thing about Zergi is that he always scales. In every game, in every situation, you will find Zergi scaled in the late game. And that's, of course, very important because he's the player that has the role of the carry. He plays usually the carry characters and he's always fit late game. And his mechanics are also one of the best. So when he's fit and when he got to that point, he always delivers. And for number 4, it's Hydration. He was kind of the core of the greatest team in NA, which is Hydra Nation. This team was winning most of the year, and I've taken it as he was kind of the leader of the team. He's a flexible player, but specializes on the support characters like Dynamo, for example. And it's very hard to find games where hydration was the problem. He's always consistent, always delivers, and that's what is expected from a support player. And as some pieces were moving on the hydration squad, hydration stayed. And for number 3, we have Ido. Now, Ido wasn't the most successful in terms of winning a lot. But in my opinion, that was because he wasn't in the best teams most of the year. Here in the history, it doesn't show, but he was in many different teams and he was always the best in the weak teams that he has been. But sometimes he actually got to win some of the tournaments, despite the team being lacking in skill. But now he's been a part of the Melee Creeps, which were the second most winning team in NA. And with the implosion of Hydra Nation, they became the only good team. But the thing with Aido is that in every single lobby that he's been in, every single game, he's always looked like he was the best player. And you can tell this by all stages of the game. He's always having a lead in lane, despite him not necessarily playing characters that would generate leads, like for example Calico or Mina. But he would find ways to gain a lead, and then he would assert this lead throughout most fights. He's also someone who's very fast to adapt to new metas. And namely, one of the examples is when they changed the game to 3 lanes. In that patch, they added the item called Express Shot. But people didn't realize how OP it was on release. But Aido did realize. It took people a few days to like a week for them to realize how broken Express Shot was on release. But Aido is someone who found out that this item is OP from the first day. And I saw it in the builds as I play Yamato, and I was, after the new patch, I searched for the builds, and I saw Aido in the first day of the patch having a new build, and he's using the busted Express Shot. And then he played it in the tournament, and he completely 1v9'd. He completely carried with the Yamato Express Shot. And what's funny is that he was just a substitute, but he ended up being the best player on the team. Now, about the MVPs for the website I used to gather this data, it only tracks for the past around 2 months. So take this MVP count with a grain of salt. But Aido does have the most tied for most in NA. For number 2, we have Hoot. Hoot actually didn't start playing on a significant team for the first portion of the year. And a lot of EU teams tried to compete with the dominant Buff Enjoyer or Virtuous Pro, but they usually failed until a team emerged called Abrams. And this team was not winning. They were just the third best team behind Virtuous Pro and 1 win. But then the weeks went by and Abrams started winning. But then they started winning every week. And one of the start players on that roster were Hoot, which I put a lot of the success of that first iteration of the team to him. And this has been actually proven when he suddenly, all of a sudden, went to Buff Enjoyer when Michaelis retired. He came in as his replacement. So they were winning, but then he went to the weaker team. But then Buff Enjoyer started winning. The second Hoot came, the same week is the week where Buff Enjoyer started winning again. And then they started dominating. And I was shocked by that because Abram was winning for like 2 months in a row. But then the second Hoot goes to the weaker team, to Buff Enjoyers. Buff Enjoyers started winning everything. So this really highlighted that Hoot was the key player on both rosters, and he's the one who decided the winner, depending on the team that he's on. Hoot is a player that specializes in like off carries. Although he's very flexible, he can play any character. He usually performs best in like Infernus, Geist, Gun Holiday, and he's a player even when his team is losing, always looks to be performing, and he's always high on souls and trying his best to win. Hoot has 3 final MVPs, which is tied for most in EU. Now, for honorable mentions, these are players that were one of the best in the world, but they didn't make the cut. Starting with ABL, Lefa. Those two players, I think, have some similarities, not in their hero pools or playstyle, but rather to their general mentality that I've got from those two players. Those two are insanely mechanically gifted, and by that, they win a lot of lanes. But the problem with these two players, even though sometimes they look like the best player in the lobby, like often even, is that they also have games where they look a bit lost. They look like they are not really knowing what to do. And these two are very close to making it to the list, but this is the factor that separates them from the ones on the list, their consistency. And then together, he's probably the best melee main characters. Obicum, he was the support player for Virtus Pro, and he's actually one of the first to do some insane things with Doorman when he got first released. Then Listic. Listic is an extremely flexible player. He was probably the best Victor when the character was busted at release. And then John and Saya. These two are players with melee creeps. They are very consistent and they have their performances where they look the best. And then Average and Brocane, also very excellent players from the Hydra Nation core. And lastly, Michaelis. I just had to mention him despite him retiring. Michaelis was probably the best player on 2024, which was like 4 months of competitive play. But he was the best when he kind of revolutionized the game by buying Mystic Shot on Vindicta. And then at the start of the year, he was still looking like the best player, maybe in the world. But as the weeks went by, there was a player that in his same team kind of took his spot as the best player on the best team, which is number 1. We have Dimov. Dimov, by the eye test, was the best player in the world. But the statistics also show that he's had the most earnings, the most first place finishes among all players, and tied for most final MVPs. When Holiday got released and she was kind of OP, it was Dimov who was the best player at her, despite him trying not to be the carry because he's playing a pick character of Holiday. He always ended up having the most souls because he simply got a lot of kills just by his mechanical prowess. He's the most aggressive player on of all pros, maybe. He's always trying to pursue some lead, and with his level of mechanics, he usually finds them. He's extremely flexible, and the difference between him and even players like Hoot and Abel, even when we talk about flexibility, is that he's flexible, but on the characters that he's flexible at, he's the best at. He played a lot of Yamato, Mirage, Shiv, Viscous. And what's crazy about this player is that he's very young. He's actually only 18. So Dimov could be someone who will be seen at the top of the Deadlock scene for a long time. And as for now, he sits at the throne as the GOAT of the sport. Thanks for watching.